Hello, welcome along to Sports Tonight Live. We'll be your usual football chat this evening on the night that Andre Villas-Boas is officially confirmed as a new Tottenham Hotspur manager. We'll touch on Wimbledon though, other issues, the British Grand Prix around the corner, but football, as ever, our main focus, and that's because our two guests reflect that emphasis. Leroy Rosenior, former West Ham, Fulham as a player, most notably, of course, you know, went around the block a little bit, Leroy, no offence intended, but as a manager experience as well, and then Wayne Veysey, football correspondent for Goal.com. Gentlemen, welcome. Leroy, off the top, then your first reaction when you heard that Villas-Boas had been confirmed as Tottenham boss on a 3-year contract?
I was very surprised. I was very surprised. I think there's a lot of people. I know he was linked with the job, but I thought that was just his agents doing the job.
Yeah.
And then my first reaction was, you know, whether you agree with Harry Redknapp going or not, then the next manager has got to take Tottenham forward. Is AVB better than Harry Redknapp at this moment in time? I really don't think so. You know, yeah, I know he had a tough time at Chelsea, but that's what you judge managers on, by their recent experiences, and the way he handled the Chelsea thing was poor, and in everybody's terms. So to go on and get the Tottenham job when they finish fourth, when they finish higher than Chelsea,
yeah.
I think Harry Redknapp will be, you know, spitting a few feathers, because, you know, I expected a David Moyes or someone of that ilk to take Tottenham to try and get them into the top four again, which would most probably get them that Champions League spot. I think it's a real gamble.
Someone achieved in the Premier League. Well, Wayne, of course, is 30 years younger than Harry Redknapp, which is all part of Daniel Levy's big plan or project for the future, but always seems a little bit funny to me in football when they talk about long-term plans, because if it goes as badly as it did at Chelsea, potentially you'll be out of a job in 3 months, let alone 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, there's a counter argument to that. They've just built a new training ground, which is absolutely world class. I've seen it myself. It's amazing. They want a coach who can improve players at the training facility, and, you know, bring out a different kind of ethos to the club. I mean, Harry Redknapp was wonderful for 4 years. I think he did a great job, but you know, it was mainly he was buying older players and players with no resale value. They want to change that. They want to bring in, you know, obviously a younger manager with a younger squad and lower the average age of the squad. I look at it kind of a little bit differently. First of all, Tottenham looked at him being the manager a year ago, because they were planning for 18 months for Harry Redknapp's departure, because Fabio Capello could easily have gone after the last World Cup. Harry Redknapp was a favourite then. They've been looking a long, long time. Carlo Ancelotti was right at the top of their list for a long time before he got PSG job. Mourinho was one they always looked at. And once this issue with Daniel Levy and Harry Redknapp just became, they couldn't work out their differences, so one of them had to go. It's always going to be the manager in that case. Then they were looking around. I think that was he's the prototype they were looking for.
Never been shy of looking around, have they, Tottenham? That's been part of the problem in the past with the whole one-day Ramos saga and Martin Jol. But let's have a look at what Andre Villas-Boas just said, and we said, and not to be too tongue-in-cheek about it, but it almost looked like a statement he pre-prepared just to fill in the missing number at the top. You know, the Tottenham Hotspur is a great club with a strong tradition and fantastic support. I feel privileged to be its coach. No real kind of specific information about his knowledge or affinity to Spurs or anything like that, but I suppose it's standard. But we're looking at, before we came on air, just about the managers that have been there since Arsene Wenger took over at Arsenal. It'll always be the comparison, won't it? The North London Giants. We've had Christian Gross there, David Pleat about 3 times, likes of George Graham, Glenn Hoddle, Jacques Santini, Martin Jol, Clive Allen for a period, then Juan de Ramos after he was openly courted, despite Martin Jol making him on the verge of a top 4 club. Leroy, I just wonder how dangerous a game Tottenham are playing is. How dangerous is the decision?
Well, I think it's very dangerous. I understand, you know, Daniel Levy, you know, saying we want a coach to go in and coach the young players. But, you know, after the season started, Tottenham haven't won their first few games. They want a coach who coaches the first team. Yeah. What you have at a club, you have something that runs under it, which is a consistent. And the consistent person in the football club nowadays is not the head coach or the manager. It's the academy, the man, or it's the man who works under there. He's the one who brings the players on, who's there for 10, 15 years. That's the appointment they should make. And the manager should be going to a club to manage the first team, because he will not have time to go and coach, and when he's got the press to deal with, the media to deal with, the young players, and I promise you, if Spurs are not in the top 4 with young players or younger players, they will go out and get some experience to sort of deal with it, because he will deal with the first team. So it's a great plan, you know, young manager for a young club and a new train, but you need a manager who's great at coaching the first team. And at this moment in time, I wouldn't have picked AVB myself.
Well, let's take a look at his stats, because this is what it's all based on, isn't it? His club record: goals 51, wins 45, draws 4, losses 2. This, of course, was the time at FC Porto, the treble that he won. You just kind of wonder. That's based on one season, though, wasn't it? And I've seen Liga Sagres live. I saw Madeira Derby. In due respect, it isn't the highest standard in Europe, is it?
Yeah, but Ed, you know, Andre Villas-Boas, he's only been a manager at a professional level for 3 years.
Yeah.
So he started in 2009. 3 years at Porto. He was there a season. He had an even better record than Mourinho in the league. In the season, they were undefeated. They won the league. Yeah, you can say Porto won the league most years, but still, they won the league. They won the cup, and they won the Europa League. Yeah. So that, I mean, he couldn't have done anything more.
Totally agree.
This time 12 months ago, he was the hottest young manager in Europe.
Every
club was looking at him.
Did we learn from the last 6 months? Boy,
has he gone cold.
This is the Chelsea record, then.
This is what I judge him by. I don't question his Porto record. Fantastic record.
So 19 wins for Chelsea last season, 11 draws, 10 losses. That's a big stat, isn't it, for a team that was the number one or number two side in front of you.
And Porto have done. They've won the league. They won the Europa League. This is what he did at Chelsea, and it wasn't just the way Chelsea played. It's the way he dealt with the press. Everything about him, I felt in his tenure at Chelsea was pretty negative. And you know, and I don't disagree that he's a great coach. I don't disagree that he could go on to be one of the greats. I'm not so sure that it's going to be at Spurs after what I saw at Chelsea last year. So you know, I think he's 34 and he's still a young man, a long way to go. I didn't expect him to go and get a top 4 job in the Premier League again. I think it's a real shock. I think it's a real surprise. And Daniel Levy, I think, is a big gamble. And what it's done, you know, even though Spurs finished 4th and they were deflated by Chelsea when in the Champions League and not getting that Champions League spot, what it's done, it's totally deflated all Spurs supporters, I should think. And they're not sure. They're hoping. They think, yeah, he's decent.
And it's always tough after he's been rejected by a rival as well, because Chelsea's a big Tottenham rival. Let's hear from a former Tottenham player. Micky Hazard now joins us over the line. Micky, good evening to you, sir. Good to talk to you. You well?
Good evening. Yeah, very well, thanks.
Good stuff.
Hi,
now,
Micky.
we've talked about our reaction, some sort of stunned shock. I know it's been coming. It's apparently their only candidate. It's been in the news for the last few days. It was Andre Villas-Boas. What are your thoughts, or what were your thoughts when you first heard he was going to be the new Tottenham boss?
Well, obviously, the speculation surrounding him had been there for quite a while, so it wasn't such a surprise. And I had heard lots of rumours from sort of good sources, so yes, not surprised. But my initial thought was, is it the right man? I'm not questioning his ability as a coach or as a manager. I think what he did at Porto was absolutely fantastic and amazing. But he's 34 years of age. I'm not sure how he dealt with the top players at Chelsea when he was brought into sort of the changing of the guard, if you like. Did he handle it as well as maybe he could have? Was he clever enough in his dealings with it, in making a changeover? Experienced players sometimes help inexperienced players to come through.
Yeah, I do.
So yes, one of big surprise, but you know, I'm still not disappointed because I think he's a footballing man, that will play the style of football that Spurs play. So could be suited.
Tactically, quick question, because we were talking about this before we came on tonight about the Chelsea infamous high line last season. Obviously, John Terry wasn't adapted to that. We saw Roy Hodgson with England play a very much deeper line. Do you worry about Tottenham's ability to play that style high up towards the halfway line? And would it impact, Leroy, you were talking about potentially impacting the attacking style of play and limiting the space for the likes of Bale and Lennon? Yeah,
no, Micky, do you think that's going to suit them trying to play a high line?
I think so, yes. I think that often last season, certainly in the running, whenever I watched Spurs, I always thought we needed to push up and defend a little bit higher up the pitch. So when we won the ball, we were actually starting from a much higher position. And certainly when you look at the back line of Spurs, there's a lot of pace in there. So pushing higher up the pitch won't be such a threat to Spurs because of the pace. I think with John Terry in the side, he lacks a little bit of pace, so his first tendency is to drop deep. So it obviously would have affected John more so than it will affect the Spurs defenders. So I don't see it as a big problem for Spurs.
No, I don't either, Micky. What I was saying to Eddie is that when you play a game of football, you've got to be flexible. And you know, you push up.
That's his style, and that's his only way.
That's how he wants to play. And you know, I think you've got to be flexible. You've got to be able to play deep. You've got to be able to push up high. But if you play up high, the likes of Bale and Lennon, their pace will be nullified because they'll be playing in tight spaces. Isn't that where Spurs struggled last year?
No, I'm actually talking about when the opposition's got the ball, I feel like we need to defend a bit higher up the pitch. When we've got the ball, then it's the ball circulation that ultimately will create the spacing behind the defence. As we saw with Spain in the World Cup, teams defended the edge of the box, but they could still get players in behind defences. So ultimately, when you've got the ball, it's about the ball circulation, how quickly you do it, and the depth that you give when you've got the ball to then open up the spaces in behind defences by pulling them onto you by the amount of passes that you've circulated in the meantime to attract the defence to you. That then leaves the space in behind for the likes of Bale and Lennon to get in there.
Mickey, do you worry about the team spirit factor though? I know because some people laugh at it, but Harry Redknapp, known as putting his arm around players, getting the best out of them, and Andre Villas-Boas, in stark contrast last season, seemed to alienate most of the Chelsea players. Is that a concern, an understandable concern of some Tottenham fans?
Well, I think you'd like to think that the first thing that Andre Villas-Boas did when he left Chelsea was he sort of analysed his role there and what he did well and what he did not so well. And you'd like to think that he's dealing with the press and he's dealing with the elder players especially. Maybe he's learned something, or you hope he's learned something from that, because when he comes to Spurs, he's now got to have taken on board all the mistakes that he made at Chelsea and put them right here. But what you have to say is, with regard to his time at Porto, was that here we have a manager who won the Portuguese League, the Cup, and he won the Europa League. So he's obviously proved that he can manage. He has proved that tactically he can be very good, and he has done it in a style that's suited to Spurs. So if he's learnt the lessons from his time at Chelsea, and again, I think it's odd because he's such a young man at 34, sure, but I like to think that he's a very intelligent man who's learnt from his mistakes at Chelsea.
Mickey, a lot of talk now, obviously, from Daniel Levy about a long-term plan. Harry was only offered a year extension because he's 65 years of age and has had some health concerns, in fairness. But do you have a smile sometimes when you hear about clubs talking about long-term plans? We saw that before with Juan de Ramos, didn't we, after Martin Jol's departure in kind of unpleasant circumstances. It doesn't seem to ever be a long-term plan in football, is there? It's knee-jerk. How long does he have to impress the club? And if it's a similar start to the season as Chelsea endured last season, will he not be finding himself out of work again?
Well, I think he'd certainly come under pressure if he has a similar start, given the squad of players that he's inherited. I must confess, I believe it's the duty of every manager, whether the long-term or whether they're a long-term or short-term choice. I do believe it's the duty of every manager to actually build a club, not to build a team. It's to build a club. When you watch Alex Ferguson, what he did for Manchester United, he's built a club time after time after time, by bringing youth through. And I think whether you're there for 2 years or 3 years or 10 years, it's your responsibility to set up a good youth setup that will help long-term success at the club.
Certainly so. Well, Mickey, great to speak to you. We hope you long-term success for your Tottenham next season, and hopefully catch up with you soon.
Brilliant. Thank you. See you soon.
Cheers, Mickey. Good to hear from you. Interesting,
no problem.
There, isn't it? And the contrast, though, here in the Tottenham perspective, because it is a little bit different when it's Tottenham, isn't it? Because of the rapidity of the changing over of managers. 14, I've got a list in front of me, and it's a few names reappeared on it since 1996, when Joey Francis was in charge. You just wonder, with Spurs, are they going to shoot themselves in the foot?
It's interesting, the last thing Mickey said about building a club.
Yeah.
And the name that came out was Sir Alex Ferguson. But Sir Alex Ferguson had been around a bit before he got the Man United job and was given the remit to build a club. Now, the AVB...
We'll hear the 14 managers on the graphic as well that people can look at.
And there's some very experienced managers who did build the club. Believe me, Spurs has been built. David Pleat did a fantastic job there in terms of the ethos, the team he played with, Clive Allen, Glenn Hoddle took that on. And there's always been a style about Spurs. So, is AVB the right man to build a club and build an ethos? Well, Spurs already have that ethos.
Yeah.
And you just think that somebody more experienced would go in and be better suited to the job. Someone like David Moyes, I really do. I can't believe David Moyes wasn't in the running for that job, because I honestly thought it was the right time, the right place for him to leave Everton, to go to Spurs and really build something.
I know why David Moyes wasn't in the running. I think when Tottenham played Everton, I think it was in March this year at Goodison Park, the chairman walked away from the match saying, I don't want Spurs to ever play like Everton. So he didn't like the style of football that Everton played, and he thought that Moyes was at an age where he couldn't change.
But go back to Sir Alex Ferguson point, and the point of long term and how much time you have. He's not going to have what Fergie took over in late 1986, won the FA Cup in 1990. There's no way he's going to have that point. It's that stretch.
Yeah, and also
at Tottenham.
It's not actually that long a contract, is it? A 3-year contract is, you know, it's. I mean, the average is probably 4, and his is 3, rather than 5, isn't it? So it's not like he's been given a really long contract. Obviously, he has to get results straight away, same as any manager. One thing I'd say, Eddie, though, is that, you know, they're looking to make changes at Tottenham. They're changing the squad. You know, Modric is on his way. They've got new players coming through. These discussions that Daniel Levy's had with Villas-Boas, there's been lots of discussions in the last 2 weeks. I mean, he's been nailed on for the last 10 days to be the manager, absolutely nailed on. He's offered the job 10 days ago. You know, they've been planning. They know they've got a fair idea of what they're going to do and where they're going to go, and they're planning for life after Modric and all things like that. Obviously, I mean, Harry was great, but there were major issues between the chairman and the manager that they just couldn't sort out.